You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast, everybody. I am back, or I didn't actually go away, I just didn't talk to anyone last couple weeks. And I am here now with all three of us. Paul, Anna, how are you guys doing?
Lovely, mate.
Doing fantastic, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I am not used to talking on the show anymore after 2 weeks of being spoiled without having to do any work.
Yeah, you've been kind of creepily or voyeuristically just listening from the closet, and I'm glad to pull you back out for something I'm very excited to talk about. I've been trying to, I've been trying to peer pressure you into talking about this for some time, which would be the 96 greatest adventure game of all time. To the listeners, I should make it clear too that Anna and I both played this game as youngins or whatever. So we both have a degree of nostalgia for Gold Rush, where Rick does not. He literally was finally just forced into playing it through relentless peer pressure just a few days ago, basically. So just for you listening, you can understand that there's almost a potentially interesting perspective on this game, one from that of somebody who does enjoy, AGI games, parser games, but didn't grow up with it, has no rose-tinted view on the game. And then Anna and I'll be representing the more nostalgia-viewed aspect of it.
Which doesn't make the game necessarily any easier for any of us to play, other than the bits we've memorized.
Yeah, no, I can't, I do not retain puzzle memory whatsoever on how to solve things.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start off with a little bit of context? Like, give us an idea of what it was like playing it when you first played it. What's the experience of playing it for the first time at the times that you did? Like, first of all, how old were you guys when you first played this?
I was 12. How old were you, Paul?
I was probably 9-ish.
Oh, wow, that's young to hit this game up. And here I am thinking I had a hard time with it at 12. How did you do with it when you were 9?
Oh, not well. Yeah, not well at all.
And don't forget that Paul's a bit younger than we are too. So like, his 9 is our like, oh geez, how old would we have been? We've probably been in like
20.
I was probably already graduated by then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I feel so delightfully young at the moment, despite my balding head and gray hairs. This is nice.
I didn't say you aged well.
I'll say that I did. I'm not sure if it's even fair to say like I played the game. I was at that age where it was so much fun and Rick and I've discussed this in the past regarding Police Quest, where games like this had like this open world sort of feel when you're younger, and before, modern games, actual open worlds existed, where I think I just walked around Gold Rush for probably months. And we had it on the Macintosh. So I played it in black and white for like a year or two. And then it was the first game that I played in color. Police Quest 1, Space Quest 2, and Gold Rush, all those are lumped together when I say the first one. So if anybody, heard other episodes where I claim one of those two was the first, you're also right, because I'm not sure. Point is, I basically shifted from black and white, monotone to color with Gold Rush. And I remember firing up, I think it was like Apple II GS or whatever, firing it up and seeing it in color for the first time and having me bloody mind blown. So, but I was probably maybe 12-ish when I actually was playing it for real.
Yeah, I would say that's a good age for it, because I guess I did what you did. I spent the first few months wandering around going, wow, this city's cool. I never really got off the ground. It was in amber monochrome, so my color scheme was slightly different, as many of you probably already know about me. That is the type of monitor I had growing up, so most of my games were amber monochrome. Yeah, and it was just a fun game to walk around with. I was honestly really, really excited that I was going to have a game that had 3 expeditions.
Mm-hmm. That was a big deal back then, too.
It was huge.
Yeah. Like, people might not understand, like, these days, people feel ripped off if, like, any game doesn't have, like, 1,000 multiple endings, right? Like, the whole Mass Effect fiasco, which I kind of understand to some degree, given the genre and, like, sort of, like, the build-up, but...
Everybody wants every conversation tree to have a an ending that makes the whole game different.
Yeah.
Just because they chose that one conversational, like, topic.
But, like, yeah, people get pissed off if there aren't multiple endings. But, like, back in the day, you'd be, the concept of multiple endings was already, pretty bizarre as of, like, the early 90s. But because everything, even, regardless, your path will end up in the same spot. Like,
you were trying
Indiana
to
Jones and the Fate of
the
Atlantis. Game. Yeah, like Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis will, you take these 3 paths, but you end up at the same ending, and a couple of multiple endings, so that's probably not the best example. But, when you have, like, 3 kind of basically different games, this is almost kind of like that Fate of Atlantis syndrome, where it's like, okay, which game do you want to play this time? Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And you noticed, too, when you played the game a little bit, Rick, that your adventure, the journey itself is also quite long. It's not just getting to the journey to get to the place to get the gold. The journey itself is pretty big, and there's a lot to it.
Yeah, and it's it's actually quite similar to Fate of Atlantis. Obviously, we're regarding Gold Rush in the sense, as Rick was alluding to, it's a bit of a trailblazer, being 4 years, I believe, before Fate of Atlantis. Gold Rush came out in '88, Atlantis, I believe, '92. So, it's a bit of a trailblazer, but to those listening who maybe have played Atlantis but not Gold Rush, it's very similar in the sense where you get 3 different paths to California, whereas with Indy you had 3 different paths to Atlantis. But both of those games, it's kind of like the whole second act is interchangeable, is completely different depending on 3 different angles. But like in Indy, how you end up in Atlantis, no matter what path you took, Gold Rush, you still end up in California. So it is really quite similar to the way Indy played out. But yeah, as you said at the time, it felt like buy one, get 2 free. It was just like, oh my God, when I'm done with this, I get to do it all over again a whole different way. It was mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
It was. And then there are like 150 scenes. And at the time, I just couldn't possibly imagine how there could be that many scenes in the game. And it's not till you actually play the game and you're like, oh, they're mostly a lot of the same scenes later on in the game over and over again while you're trying to gold pan.
Right. Oh, that tree's in a different spot than it was before.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's also kind of weird because, like, obviously Sierra games have always been pretty difficult from the very beginning, and there's a lot of, like, there's some moments that you definitely have to conclude were the result of them saying, oh, we really want people to call the hint line for this.
Mm-hmm.
But this game really, to me, felt like the epitome of basing the design, like the core design philosophy around the fact that you're supposed to call for hints or buy the hint book. Because there's some stuff that you're just never going to find out on your own, basically. Like, and Leisure Suit Larry 2 is very bad for that too, which came out, I think, the same year. So it's probably around the same year where, like, they're kind of doing this a lot, where it's just sort of like, wow, they just don't want you to be able to finish it unless you pay extra, right? And this came from the consideration that people were pirating these games, like, so rampantly that their major source of income was actually selling the hint books and the hint line.
I never considered that side of things, but of course it would have been a big money maker. What was it, like $5.99 a minute? I don't even know. In Canada, $10.99 a minute?
I never called it, so I have no idea.
I never called either. I'm like, but I knew whatever the number was, it was really, really expensive. So I hadn't thought of that theory, but it makes a lot of sense now that you bring it up. I mean, I don't even know how I did finish some of those games without a hint book.
Well, I forget if it was Leisure Suit Larry 1 or 2. I'm thinking it was probably 1, where they actually discovered that they sold more hint books than copies of the game. So
really?
Right?
So, crazy.
Yeah. So I think I don't know if that was like, I don't have naughty. Yeah. So I don't have this, like, I can't quite go back and project exactly what happened at that time because I was too young and I had no idea that happened until, like, in recent years. But I wonder if that was sort of like an epiphany moment where they're sort of like, hey, everyone's just going to copy our game, so if we make it really hard that they need to buy the hint books, we don't have to care so much.
This game was meant to be one great big history lesson to me. I mean, as soon as you go somewhere, it gives you little facts and details everywhere you go. It talks about geography. It talks about a lot of the struggles that were had back in the day and how difficult it was to get things. And even though the game was really difficult, did you guys not find it so much more rewarding, especially you, Paul, when you heard that noise that said you got a point, or when you'd actually get a fact or a tidbit that meant you were moving forward?
Yes, absolutely. And, I hadn't really heard this game considered to be any sort of edutainment until that top 100 list, where they basically said, we're putting it on this list because it pulls off edutainment. I never saw it as edutainment. Maybe that worked in my favor. Maybe I was allowed to spend so many hours with it because my parents thought it was, but it really hides the facts really well, in the sense that it's not like a Dr. Brain or an Echo Quest or any of those games, which are also lovely, great games, but it's not like, hey, play this, it's going to make learning fun. It's more just like, this is a fun game and you might actually learn as well. So it's a nice kind of backhanded way of just sneaking in historical facts. And I think what they done really well was this whole game. I was trying to build a case for it because I know that it doesn't hold up well, and I'm going to have to counter Rick at some point. So I needed to build up a case for it. And I think what they done really especially well was they give you a good sense of time and feeling and immersion. In other words, there's good, the characters have a personality. You're aware of your main character and his goals. And they did a really good job of constructing this world to where you actually kind of care about your journey and you feel like you're on an adventure. Which, like Anna was pointing out, made those little point chimes mean so much more.
Well, here's the thing for me, though, and I've said it before, and I stick to this, where I don't want to be overly critical on a lot of these classic games. Especially, we cover classic and indie games, which really, I don't want to punch down on them. So, part of the show is just more of like the celebration of the experience of growing up with these games, and, the experience of playing games now that are made by the people who played these games and all that sort of thing. So I don't want to come across as too negative. But when you mentioned the edutainment thing, I admit that I never really looked at it from that angle. And I don't know if I like it better or not knowing that. Because it's like, okay, yeah, they put in a lot of research. Granted, that's the fact. That's not even arguable. They did a lot of research and they put it in there. But it's like, if this was edutainment, this is like some pretty messed up child abuse. Cause like, you'd think they'd make this a game that's like okay for kids to play without, but as adults, it's like the most infuriating thing. So what's it like when you're a kid who doesn't know any better? And, so I just like, I don't know. It's, I'm not saying that to shit on it. It's just sort of like, wow, just know your audience. Who are you going with here?
Well, I guess it's tricky, I suppose, when you don't know until the end of your journey, if you've done things right or not, because often the terrible things that happen because you've forgotten specific provisions will be at the end of the journey, when you haven't had any fruit, or, you're exposed to mosquitoes too many times. So you definitely have to put a good, solid 30 minutes at least of gameplay in to find out your mistakes, especially the first time.
Yeah, actually, here's an interesting thing. Here's what I find interesting that you've kind of sparked as you were saying that in my head. You know how there's certain things like the coals were brought on to make Heroes Quest as an answer to the Ultima games, right? Mm-hmm. Was this Sierra's answer to Oregon Trail? Like, was that specifically their goal? Like, to be like, oh, let's make our own Oregon Trail?
That's a good question. I've never considered that, but it has such a similar feel and some parallels to Oregon Trail. I mean, especially that second act that we talked about with the part that you get to choose how you're going to go about it. It's basically, a journey from Brooklyn, New York to Sacramento, California. So it's captures that same spirit of traveling east to west and in the same time frame. And basically there's too many similarities to overlook. And I'll kind of add coal to that fire in the sense that Sierra, I believe just after, and I could be wrong about this, but I think just after Gold Rush onwards got really heavy into edutainment. I mean, they had their whole Discovery series with, Dr. Brain and Pepper's Adventures in Time and all those edutainment games. In other words, it was on Sierra's map, yeah.
So what you're saying is this could be a bridge.
Exactly, yeah, where it's not directly marketed to kids. I'm not even sure they realized that they were making an edutainment game, unless they realized that they were trying to make a spin-off of Oregon Trail.
I think you've just connected up a few little bits then. Yeah, from trying to create a new genre within the adventure game category that hits adults and potentially a younger audience. Maybe they were going for specifically 14-year-olds with this game, 14 to 16 or something, like teenagers.
Yep. Or maybe they had so many people in the offices saying similar things to what Rick said, who is this game for? And Sierra's like, you know what, you're right. Let's double down and make our edutainment marketed just for children. Let's give it its own series, the Bloody Discovery series, because they made it very clear from here on out that these titles were edutainment, whereas Gold Rush, but at the same time, again, Gold Rush, it's not necessarily edutainment. I mean, there is a lot of true facts and things like that, but it definitely doesn't, you wouldn't fire it up and be like, oh, I'm learning. Which is a good thing, I think.
I will say, just for like the historical context of it for myself as a child back in the days, is that I remember playing other games. I forget exactly which ones, but like I was so in love with video games. Like even when we would like take a road trip somewhere, I would just bring a computer game box to the car with me and just like flip through all the stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so, one of the things I'd love to do was just sort of like gaze through the product manuals and just daydream about one day I might have some of these games and which ones look cool and all that. Gold Rush was always top of that list. Like the art for the, not the game itself, although I'm sure at the time it was great. Just like the box art. You guys know, you have the box.
Yeah.
I'm staring
that cover
at it
art
right now.
was just so cool. Like, as soon as I saw that, and, having not played the game, my mind just sort of fills in the blanks and just imagines what it could be like. Having played...
So much cooler.
Yeah, like, having played Police Quest and Space Quest at that point, and it's thinking like, oh, Gold Rush in the Western, there's a guy being held at gunpoint and all that on the box. And it was just so... Like, this is probably one of the top games I always wanted to play as a kid, but never did until recently, which probably also kind of emphasizes my my disappointment in it.
Yeah, especially having that hype.
For sure. I could see why you would have liked the box as a kid. I don't know if you had the version that had the story of Rust to Riches in yours, Rick, did you?
I don't know. I only ever saw the front cover.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because in the actual big box that I have, it comes with its lovely instruction booklet that comes with, how Sierra did those great faux leather covers made out of this lovely cardboard. I love it. Anyways.
Well, I mean, that would not have been included in the product manual, but...
No, I guess not. But that one, good point, Brian. For some reason, I thought you actually had the box to go with it as well. I see. You just brought the product manual with you.
Oh, yeah, no, it was some other game. I forget which one. Probably like, what did I have back then? I don't know, some other Sierra game. Maybe it was even Police Quest. I liked Police Quest a lot.
So yeah, the box came with the story of Rush to Riches, which is an actual account of the California Gold Rush and some of the stories from back in the day and the routes people would have taken. It's all factual. It comes with pictures and diagrams. I mean, it's a solid 85 pages of goodness. So if you
85.
had the real big box with you on your journeys, you could have learned an awful lot without even playing the game.
I probably want that box more for the contents than the actual game.
Yeah.
And the map. You guys, the map, right?
Oh, the map,
Any
yeah.
game with the map just gets that little extra oomph of respect. And the map in this game feels good. It's got a nice weight to it. The paper is nice. It's a good map.
Yes, when I was a kid, right around this age that we discussed, 9 to 12ish, I used to put on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and then I would get that map, and that would work into my role play, and then my grandmother, somebody left behind like a little pocket Bible that was like the same dimensions as the Grail Diaries, and I would use that Gold Rush map and that little pocket Bible and pretend I was indie. It was such a crucial part of some awkward, nice. 9-year-old phase. But yeah, I will say a few things on on the map or on the book. One, it's the copyright protection for the game, which is such a pain in the dick because it is like 80 bloody pages, and the question's always different. So it'll be like, what's the 5th word on the 12th paragraph on page 68, and you got to scroll all the way through and try and find it, and that's a pain in the ass. And then the other kind of just humorous thing is that the PDF, will come with a download from wherever you purchase it from. I don't think this one's on GOG. I think it's Steam only, which is odd. Steam. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the PDF for the book it's like 40 bloody megabytes, and then the entire game is like 2.5 or something like that.
Oh, that's funny. See, this is why people ask, why do you collect big boxes if you're not even going to play the games inside? Because I want to refer to the original documentation, because PDFs are a pain in the ass, and so many of them, you can't even search for a word because it's photocopied in, and so it doesn't let you highlight or copy or look for stuff. So the original big box with original documentation is the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Especially scrolling through 80 pages to get to that one paragraph. Yeah, it's such
Jesus,
pain.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Did either of you play the Anniversary remake?
A little, yeah. I actually managed to get myself a copy of the big box, which comes with a map. Once again, very high quality map paper. Actually, I would even say it's a little bit thicker than the paper that was used in the original game, and a coin as well, and it was definitely another version of the Gold Rush game.
Yes, I like Anna's almost American Psycho level of paper analysis.
It's important to me. My mom was a graphics artist. I just can't help but oohing and awing over beautiful papers.
It's lovely. It is. And to answer your question, the nice thing I'll say about it is that I bought it. All right? Yes. I bought it. I gave him the money. I own the big box. I even bought the sequel. I haven't played it because, as I think Rick and I have discussed in the past, it was made in 2014. The graphics look a bit 2003-ish. I don't know. It's just... I don't see a need for it. It doesn't, an example I recently learned was that they kept in all the dead ends that Gold Rush has, which, many of the AGI games had, i.e. having to get something early in the game, and if you don't have it later on, you're screwed. They kept all that stuff in, so it's like... Which
is strange, because if you're going to do a remake, you got to improve at least a little bit somewhere.
Yeah, at least bring it up to today's, don't screw me standards.
They didn't really improve on the animation. I would say, hey, don't get me wrong, I appreciate 3D animation, and sometimes it is done just beautifully, but what I found a bit of a problem with this was there was no flow to the animation. The people are walking, but their clothing is not responding to it.
Right.
It just doesn't quite work.
Yeah. Here's one of my things is that because I did buy it, Anna, in fact, you were the one who told me about it because it went on super sale. So I, spent the $20 Canadian, including shipping. I think all of that was shipping. They're probably just giving the box away. And number one, I totally agree. The map is actually really good. And I don't have a history with this sort of things other than I am a bit of a stationery geek. So I just love stationaries and papers and pens and stuff like that.
So good.
Yeah. So there's no reason for it. I just am. So I do agree with your assessment that it is a pretty satisfying map to have.
Gonna have to do a Patreon special where you two just drool over
just talk about stationery. I could totally do that. I don't think anyone would pay to hear that.
It all starts as a childhood when my mom would yell, "Which paper did you take to use?" And it just
I don't even have that sort of an excuse.
Can I be the one that voyeuristically just sits quietly in the background of that episode?
Your turn, Paul.
We'll turn it into a debate. What is the best paper?
Ooh, yeah. What weight is your stock?
But so here I am just looking at the box in front of me, and I'm looking at a picture on the internet of the cover of Gold Rush, the original, I should say. Sorry. And again, like I mentioned to you guys before, I saw the cover of the original Gold Rush in the old product manuals, or whatever you call product catalogs, sorry, I should say. And I'd just be like, oh my god, that looks so good. And I look at the Gold Rush Anniversary box, I'm like, what is this? Are aren't you supposed to be trying to sell me on the game with the box? Like, it doesn't look like a game I'd want to play particularly.
His eyes and his hand throw me off on the front too. Just a little bit. There's just something, and I appreciate the graphic styling. I flipped over the box and did what you guys did, and you mentioned it briefly in the other episode. I looked for the date and then was quite surprised that it was 2014.
Mm-hmm. And
yes, it would look right at home 10 years prior, for sure. That came across a lot harsher than I meant it to.
But I just mean, like, wait, look at the original box. And just, like, gorgeous hand-drawn art of a guy, like, panning for gold or digging for gold or, looking for gold. And a guy is robbing him at gunpoint. That box sells me on it, right? And this one is just sort of like, I don't know. There's just not the cool factor. It's like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? Like,
yeah, it's just this aged 3D model. Like, you got to be kind of really confident that you're breaking new ground to use a 3D model as your box cover, and it was not.
Let's even get past that. Let's get past the actual, like, let's assume that it's this, like, really well hand drawn thing. Is this like the original one shows like this really cool scene and just kind of suggests to you what might be in the game. Like, what would this game be like? Right? It's like, it's like danger and adventure and, gold and all that. And this one's sort of like, there's a boat and a carriage in the background of a guy flipping a coin.
Yeah, they're trying to advertise what's in their own box. He's flipping a coin because it includes a coin. It's got a map because it includes a map. It's got the graphics because that's how they made it to look, and they're proud of it. That's all that they're doing is they're advertising themselves. It's just not working.
Good point. Yeah, they're advertising the contents of the box.
Yeah. That must have been the selling points. Clearly, I bet they sold more of these boxes than they've got downloads on games. But
I would be more impressed if it also came with like a miniature paddle wheel boat and a little coach. Because then if everything on the box except for the guy, or actually I don't know, if they included his jacket in the box, I totally, and his shirt. He has a really cool shirt.
Clothing in a big box would be great. I'd go for that.
Yeah.
Here's 7 things you should play with instead of the game inside of it.
Hours of entertainment, not including the game.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, like, as horrible as the graphics are, even for its own time, let alone now, it's like, even just going back and playing the original, and I like AGI, and I like the old Sierra games, I like the parser, and just going back and playing it, I was just sort of like, it's the same kind of, me wanting to like it in the same way that I wanted to like Leisure Suit Larry 2, and I really wanted to like Space Quest 2, which I didn't dislike, but it was just, there was something about it where it's sort of like, why don't I like this? Like, how could they have dropped the ball that they could make me dislike an old school Sierra classic?
Yeah, no, that's actually a good question. Well, let me ask, did it give you your removal of nostalgia from the game while you were playing it? Did it give you the understanding of why somebody who does have nostalgia for it would enjoy it, or was it just kind of void of any appeal?
I always understand how nostalgia can make anyone like anything, and that's why Dragon's Lair is popular.
Got him. Nice.
So I get it. I get that there's certain things that just were good enough, and nostalgia fills in the blanks. And so there's no game that I can't write off as like, even nostalgia can't save this, or maybe there's a couple, but even still, probably not. You could just give me the shittiest game ever made, and someone say, this is the one game that I got to play with from the ages of 5 to 10. And I'll be like, that's a good reason to like that one, even though it's objectively bad. So I don't know. I actually really want to try finding a way to play this game in Amber Monochrome, because that's what I would have been playing with at the time. And that might actually give me a little bit more of a nostalgia swell, because there's nothing else for me to base it on. So maybe if it sort of graphically matches the games that I was playing at the time in terms of like the monochrome at least, then it might give me something. But I don't know. Like I said, it's one of those things where I play it and it's sort of it wants to sell me hint books because it's sort of like, yeah, we're going to make sure you cannot do this unless you know exactly what to do.
Well, is that the way that you want to play it? I mean, do you want to be able to go through the game and figure it out and finish it in all the different ways just to be able to see everything that happened? Or do you want to follow a hint book and go step by step and just do what you need to do to get through the game just so that you can see everything that's happened? How do you want to play this game?
I don't.
But if you absolutely had to...
I would... Based on playing through the first act on, and maybe I'll consider possibly playing further on Twitch at some undetermined point in the future. Maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't think I have the stamina to try playing it hardcore. I think I would need all the advice, possibly walkthroughs, like, just get me through the game just so I can experience it. But I just don't have the patience for that sort of thing right now. And honestly, there's like this whole generation, even within AGI, even though I grew up with a lot of AGI, there's still like the tail end of AGI that I didn't grow up, that I skipped over inadvertently. And I don't know if I would have liked a lot of these games back then, being particularly Gold Rush, Leisure Suit Larry 2, and along those lines, where it's just sort of like where they're clearly just trying to sell me a hint book, and they do, like, it was already bad enough when it was just like, you know, Space Quest 1 and Police Quest 1, where it's just really hard. But when it's just like they're really just at this point trolling the players.
I think personally that Leisure Suit Larry 2 is extra hard because it was the first game that Al Lowe had to put together completely on his own, and he wanted to pay respect to the first one but also give it his own spin. And he was kind of learning and figuring it out because Softporn was already written, even though he did add in some writing and put in the graphics. It was really, really true to the original storyline, and 2 was
but let
totally
me put
neat.
it this way, though. Let me put it this way. In Leisure Suit Larry 2, there is a puzzle where you need to get an item for later in the game. By the time you get to that part in the game where you need it, you cannot go back to the start of the game.
Yes.
To find this item, you have to search a garbage can. And when you search it, it says there's nothing in the garbage can. Or like there's nothing, you don't find anything in the garbage can. So then you wander around, maybe looking for stuff to do, and maybe you forgot that you already checked the garbage can, so you check it again, and it says you do not find anything in the garbage can. The exact same message you got before to train you into thinking that this is the only message you're ever going to get if you search a garbage can. Then the third time you do it, it's like, oh, well, now that you look at it, you find the thing that you're looking for. So...
Well,
that's
a lot of games
very
did
deliberate. That's a very deliberate design choice.
What about Infocom? In Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, at the beginning of the game, you have to buy a cheese sandwich from a bar. It doesn't even give you the option that you can buy a cheese sandwich, but you buy a sandwich from the bar, you walk out, a yipping dog runs by, and if you give it the cheese sandwich, you can finish the game because he does not eat a tiny microscopic space fleet, which you don't find out till the end. And if you don't give him the sandwich, he does eat it, and you can't finish. So,
well, that's a pretty good counterpoint coming from a game that I don't believe was in the hint book market at the time.
I have heard campfire stories of how painfully difficult Hitchhiker's Guide, the Infocom game, was. But I don't know. All I can say is, I mean, it's. You also got to think about it in context of, like, you know, Hitchhiker's Guide, of course they're going to troll players. I'm not forgiving them for that, but I kind of almost expect it. But coming from Sierra, that was really notorious for doing that as a business practice. It kind of drowns out the whole, like, whimsical nature of it from starting the Leisure Suit Larry 2. And
it seems so cynical, you know? And I mean, by the time he did Leisure Suit Larry 3, it wasn't quite as difficult because I think he got into the pattern and he figured out what he was doing. And if it was a hint book marketing thing, wouldn't it get harder?
Well, not by that point, apparently, because apparently, like, by the time we got to the SCI era, for some reason, they just started to get better. I don't know why, but they weren't quite as bad. But sort of like the second half of the AGI era, and arguably even the first, they were just like punishingly difficult, like punishing you for playing the game difficult.
See, it's funny. Most of those older games, I didn't use hint books, but then I got to a game like Freddy Farkas, and I needed the hint book.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't need hint books, but back in those days, our version of searching the internet for a walkthrough was talking to the kids in the community who played the game.
Right, because you actually had friends that played video games. All I had was my parents who knew actual things about life things. So I'd be like, I have this question for you, and they'd be able to answer it. Like, for example, a question about what president was what when I'm trying to play a Leisure Suit Larry game, and I'm just trying to get into the damn game in the first place.
Yeah.
But there was no hint books. There was nothing. There was me taking notes and my dad coming up and trying to help me out and figure things out. I didn't have friends that were going to tell me anything about it. So it wasn't until the internet or until I'd get a boxed game with a hint book, which didn't come till much later, that I was able to get anything sorted out any other way.
It's funny. My solution was different than both of yours. We all found our own ways to working this out. Mine was that I was just lucky enough that my dad was super into these games as well. So, and he couldn't stand buying it and not finishing it. So he bloody well would spend the money on a hint book or whatever it took. Just out of sheer determination.
Gamer dads.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, I do generally, especially with modern adventure games, I do like trying to get through it myself and trying a walk through if I really get stuck. But back then, it's not even fair. It's not the same thing. It's, you can't.
I mean, a walkthrough would take 6 to 8 weeks to be mailed to you alone. I mean, that's, it's really not fair.
Well, there's that too. But I mean, just even today going back and playing it, it's not the same thing. It's like they didn't even give you a chance to figure it out on your own.
Right, you brought me back for a second there, Paul. I remember people would write into Sierra, right? I mean, I don't remember personally, but I hear the stories about it now. People would write into Sierra to ask their question about the game. Like, for example, how do I get out of the whale in King's Quest IV? And they'd send them back this lovely little neat answer and a little personal note. And how long would that take to get the answer back? Like a month?
Right, yes.
You're supposed to like wait. You're like, thanks, I figured it out now, but whatever, I got the letter.
Yeah, thanks. I'm on King's Quest V already, but I appreciate it.
You know what? I totally would love to make a game. Like, I'm almost inspired to become a game developer just so that I can make a game where the only way you can get hints is to write me a letter.
Dear Rick.
Yeah.
But after the Dear Rick columns, yeah.
and then I'll write back. And then, like, with the letter that says, here's what you do.
It would have to be some Mission Impossible kind of letter that explodes after 30 seconds of reading it, so some dick didn't put it on the internet, though.
That would be the site ricksletters.com.
Yeah.
And give everybody different answers, too. I mean, everything about this just sounds awesome.
I'll just answer really cryptically.
Just bloody gaslight the shit out of all of them.
I'll answer all questions with a question.
Complex series of riddles, each more difficult than the last.
It's like, how do you do this? And, you wait for the letter to get to me. I write back. It's like, what have you done so far?
These letters, people will be like, I've been writing with this Rick guy for like 3 years. I haven't even gotten into the fucking game. I'm just trying to get through the intro.
Or just send them like AGI kind of responses, like, sorry, I don't understand the word dude.
But, I'll tell you something, because roundabout way of going back to what you asked me originally, Paul, is like, how do I want to play? Sorry, was it you or Anna?
It was me.
Said it. It was Anna. Sorry,
yeah.
You both sound alike.
It's true.
So you're asking like how would I want to play through it now, and it would be with copious amounts of help, and because you know what, I forget which game it was, but the other day, or not the other day, many episodes ago, I was prepping up for one of these episodes where we're talking about a game. And I wanted to refresh myself by watching a walkthrough of somebody else playing it on YouTube. And there's just something about playing through, even if I'm following a walkthrough, even if that's going to take me a lot longer, there's something about it that's just infinitely better than watching a walkthrough of it, because it's just nothing. I can't say put to sleep because I have insomnia, but nothing so much more boring than just seeing somebody like play through it without me doing anything at all. Right? At least if I feel like I'm doing something, even if it is just following instructions, it's something. So
I'm right there with you. I don't have the patience to follow one of those, even if I do appreciate it when they have no talking and it's just the game. Thank you for those people that put those out there. But
you are the
I would
true
rather
heroes.
Totally. But I would much rather just read through it on a paper, or I'll pull out my Korish's hint book guide from, I think it was published in like 1995 or 1996. So it's got a pretty good spread of games in there. I'd rather follow that dense, thick. They don't separate anything into paragraphs in this guide. So I would literally just, put a highlighter paper, one of those sticky notes underneath the line I was at. Because you get so lost. It's like pages and pages, some of these games, walls of text. But I prefer that to any walkthrough video.
So we all very firmly established that I've played very little of this game. But feel that I have every realm of right to judge. So have each of you played all three paths to completion?
I have, now I've played all three paths to completion, but I didn't actually get through all three paths on my own without following some hints. You run out of time and money. The longer you take and the worse you do, is you kind of end up getting stuck not being able to get there in an easy manner.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to answer the question, absolutely. I played this game to bloody death back in the day. I probably played this game more than any other game. So I've definitely played through them all. And as Anna alluded, I played the carriage path the most, just because I would constantly miss the bloody boat. I wanted to point out too, this game, it's odd. The first act, if you will, the Brooklyn part of the game doesn't have a lot of ways to die. Rick, you had pointed out to me when we were conversing a while ago, you mentioned how it felt odd to be able to walk into the street in a Sierra game without getting killed.
Yes. And I was trying too.
Yeah, maybe the only AGI Sierra game you can freely walk into the street and survive it. But the second and third act of the game is quite relentless. There's a lot of ways to die, some of which are pretty humorous. Like, in the first act in Brooklyn, one of my favorite Sierra deaths ever, because it's relatable to me, is you can get kicked to death by a horse. Not that I've been kicked to death by a horse, but I have.
That's relatable. Doing this thing when you get kicked to death by a horse.
I come to you now as an apparition. I've been kicked in the heart by a horse, which was close to death, but it's so realistic and also so unfair / Sierra that it strikes a perfect harmony to me, where it's like, yeah, that could happen, and of course Sierra would punish you for it. But then there's other ones like the people who made Indiana Jones and the fourth movie must have played Gold Rush, I guess. Where am I going with this? Because in Gold Rush you can die from giant jungle ants, which is a thing, I guess. Now there's two things that I've seen where that happens, so I guess that's a thing. Maybe I'll Google it one day.
Well, you know what disappointed me was, you get you don't get a horse, you get a mule, and I'm like, this is great, and then it walks slowly behind you.
Oh, the mule
this is absolutely no help at all. I mean, okay, now I'm following you. Great. I mean, most difficult animal.
Yeah, you never get to ride it. If you get too close to it, it runs away. If you get too far from it, it runs away. If you do nothing at all, it runs away. And I don't even remember what I used the mule for. I know at some point you tie it up to a post and go into the hotel, and that's the last you ever see of it. I don't really know if it does anything besides be, a burden, but.
Exactly. And if you forget to brand it, you totally lose it. And you're like, well, because you lose it in the stable with all the other horses. You're just like, fuck. And then you do brand it and it's like, oh man, you're burning the horse. It smells. It actually describes the searing flesh burning. If I recall correctly, I was just like, whoa, that's kind of harsh.
All right. So, we're just coming up on time here, guys. So, now that I've totally and I really, reluctantly, it hurts me to have done dumped on a classic Sierra game like this. I do think it's got some charm to it. A lot of work and research was put into it. I'll definitely give it that. It was just a product of its time, and I just didn't play it in its context. But since we are just got to close out the show, how about some final defenses or thoughts or memories or experiences from you guys?
Well, the end of this game was very satisfying. I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody what the actual end of the game was, but as far as games go, it was a very satisfying ending. I was quite content at the end of that game.
Yes, absolutely agreed. I guess, Ricky had mentioned final words / defenses. I'll just say that I'm glad that you had mentioned that hint books were a supplement way of making money back, because I had previously really just looked at the notion of getting people to buy hint books as kind of malicious, whereas when you put it that way, if they were just trying to recuperate money from the million or hundreds and thousands of pirated copies, it actually makes me feel a lot better about it and lends me to almost excuse them for it. So I'm happy to hear about that. I do want to say, I guess, for my final thoughts is that I feel a little bad about shitting on the remake, because I spoke to one of the two main guys behind that project. I can't think of their name. It's maybe Sunlight Games. He went back and forth with me on like a dozen emails and was such a bloody gentleman, a really nice guy. And that was like haunting me in the back of my head every time I slightly shit on the remake earlier. So I will say this. If you haven't played Gold Rush, don't play the remake. Hold on. Play the, bear with me here. Play the original. It's gorgeous AGI. I think it was the second to last AGI game, Quest for Glory being the final. But they did
that's incorrect.
Is it?
No, the only two AGI games that came after Gold Rush were the AGI version of King's Quest IV, because that was released both ways, and then Leisure Suit Larry 2. Heroes Quest was full on SCI.
All right, I get that all mixed up. Thank you, mate. So I was going to say, instead of playing the remake, because you heard our thoughts on that, but because these people are really nice, and honestly, just the fact that there's developers and people out there that love Gold Rush, potentially, I guess, well, definitely more than I do, to put all this work into making a remake. They also made a sequel. Gold Rush 2, it is in the same style as their remake. Perhaps the graphics are a little better because it was a year or so later. But I'm going to check that out personally. If you have already played Gold Rush, maybe you should check that out too. I think it's on Steam or whatever, or on their website. So yeah, there's that. That's me trying to feel better about myself for shitting on some nice people.
Well, there you go. So, how about you, the listeners? What do you think of Gold Rush? Do you like it? Do you not like it? When did you play it? What are your thoughts? Let us know. Come out to the Classic Gamers Guild on Facebook. You can write to us on our page or come join our community in our Facebook group. You can also let me know and scold me on Twitter at the CG Guild. We have an email if you still write emails. The address is mail@classicgamersguild.com. If you'd like to support the show, although I'm pretty sure you don't want to after listening to this episode, but if you do want to be a Patreon supporter, you can find us there. Just look up Classic Gamers Guild, of course. Speaking of which, thank you all very much to our Patreon supporters for keeping the show going, particularly to those in the extra special thanks tier, namely Jay Holmes and Jeffrey Couch. Thank you all very much. We really appreciate your support. And of course, to all of you, the listeners, we wouldn't do this without you. So we really appreciate you. Please hit us up, write to us. Write everything, even hate mail. We don't mind. We read everything because no one writes us anything. So
it's really easy to read everything.
I volunteered to do it this week.
Yeah. I guess I do have to start using the whole... I remember a time where I think I actually swore I would never do this, so I am kind of a bloody hypocrite and a sellout, but please subscribe to our show. Please rate our show. Please follow us and, smash like buttons and stuff like that. I don't know. I feel so bad having to say that, but please do it.
Do it. Smash that like button. Smash it so hard your children can't watch.
Sorry, can I actually ask this? Like, what is it with smash that like button that everyone says that? Like, why is that the catchphrase of the internet? Does everyone just like hear it from somebody else and be like, I can't put that any better. I'm going to say that myself now too. Like,
it makes you want to hit a button, doesn't it? I mean, I feel like I need to smash something right now. Word smash, good, smash hit.
I always just think like, well, I don't have a human to smash, so I guess this button will do.
Like smash. Anyways.
All right, that's our bloody show, Rick. You did a good job. You left out a few, like, don't forget to follow us on Prodigy and CompuServe and other.
I think there's a BBS out there that likes us a little.
Oh, Christ.
I've just completely dropped Instagram from our tags because I haven't even been on there in the longest time.
Are people still going on Instagram?
I don't know. I left you in charge last time.
Oh,
should I take over
happened?
Instagram? Should I be taking it over? Because I already run my business on Instagram for me to throw another one in there. Am I saying this on layer? Is this legit? I guess I have to now. Instagram will now be functioning.
Well then, come find us on Instagram at CGG Podcast. I forgot our Instagram.
Gee, wow.
Because it's been so long. So, yeah, follow Anna on Instagram. That sounds much more appealing. At CGG Podcast.
Don't do a murder is the other thing that we say.